morning. Yesterday, I was looking up Hitler, as one does. Um, well, one thing, it seems kind of strange that he is inevitably identified with right-wing politics, but perhaps it's not entirely unwarranted. I think some of his social policies, sorry, Freudian slip, were quite conservative, at least at the time. I think there was some sort of reactive movement to some stuff that was going on in Germany at that point. But beyond that, it feels like at the very least he was kind of maybe a mixed bag. I think he was in favor of gun control. I think he wasn't really a super fan of religion in general. Like he would have written stuff about Christianity. I think he would have had to remain quiet about it, but he would have written stuff indicating that Christianity was not well suited to his purposes. They were actually trying to come up with a Nazi Bible that would make the Christianity of the day less objectionable with regards to his present ideologies. Beyond that, he was in favor of gun control. Maybe that was just, part of the times they were living in. They didn't want undergrounds going around doing stuff, so maybe they didn't want the people to have guns, people who weren't military personnel or whatever. Beyond that, he was a vegetarian. He was an animal rights advocate. He was an environmentalist, if I'm not mistaken. A lot of the upper echelon of the Nazis were environmentalists. I wonder if that was a reaction to World War I and all the destruction that happened there, and the type of warfare that would have left scars on the land or something. Maybe that would have had to do with it. He was also an authoritarian, which I guess could go for either party, but I assume he was really in favor of centralized government and government programs. Now, I'm not saying all no, okay. But beyond putting the socialist in National Socialist, I'm trying to make a broader point here. I do tend to think there is a degree of verisimilitude, an archetype almost, when it comes to individuals who are striving for perfection, like an etheric utopian future. Because it feels like people who strive for perfection in general can tend to be quite nasty or downright vicious with individuals who fall short of that. They're not exactly very forgiving. And beyond that, it feels like they can tend to do stuff that others would consider extreme or not to say morally insane in service of the vision. Yeah. Anyways, I tend to like the notion of just functionality as opposed to perfection, but seems a more reachable, less objectionable, or at least it leads to less objectionable stuff, maybe. All right, moving on. We have some stuff to look at today. For the record, the reason I'm doing this today is my weekend looks kind of crazy, so I'm going to do this now. And not do it on the weekend, I guess. Smooth, flawless, one might say. All right, a video by Oompaville. We're gonna look at what the deuce. All right, is that working? Yeah, we're good. We're good. All right. You have a video by Oompaville about the Unabomber and a video by Brett Cooper about that N-word thing that happened a while back. We'll see about that. Maybe we'll just, I don't know. This might be a shorter one. See if I feel like that. All right.
June 24th, 1993. A computer science professor at Yale walks into his office and opens a package. There's a bomb inside the package. The bomb goes off, destroys the man's right hand.
I don't think that's a accurate scale for the record.
Shatters his right eye, and by the time he reaches the hospital, his blood pressure is at 0. This video is about that man. The man.
So, as he describes it, that guy survived, actually. So, I wonder, yeah. How can your blood pressure be at 0 and you still survive? And is that supposed to be Mr. Beast?
and who sent that bomb while living in a cabin in Montana with no electricity, no running water, and for 17 years, the FBI could not find him. His name was Ted Kaczynski, and the story that you might know about him is about 10% of what actually happened. Because before he was the Unabomber, and before the cabin, and before the bombs, and before the manifesto, Ted Kaczynski was a 16-year-old kid who got into Harvard on a scholarship. And what happened to him there is something...
Harvard. The Kardashians of the... No, I don't know about that. Maybe it's still got its chops or whatever, but I don't know. It feels like the college education thing has done a very good job of denigrating its value to society in the past years.
That Harvard has worked pretty hard to try and cover up, pretty much. Also, that Yale professor...
I don't know. It's like... I don't know. It just feels like there was a lot of... Some of the idiocy we put up with these days came out of colleges. You have the certain types of professors that would take the opportunity to indoctrinate their youths into stuff.
The one who lost his hand at the top of this video for opening that package in 1993. 33 years later, today, well, a couple weeks ago, he was suspended from Yale for email.
Well, I feel like one of the problems in college is that you're kind of dealing mostly with ideas, which is maybe kind of the type of person who goes there a little bit, and the type of person who teaches there, that they almost tend to be like blue sky thinkers. It's not exactly the most practical of educations, perhaps. And there can be utility to that. There can be a utility to people who say this is what the world could be, and perhaps in spite of their impracticality, they strive for that. But you have to work pretty hard to be able to apply just an idea to reality. Otherwise, you just end up with this self-absorbed, aberrant abomination, like some sort of musing that is completely impractical because you can't connect it with reality. You can't apply it to reality.
Telling a convicted
impractical imagination. That's the I don't know.
Sex offender about young women. That is Jeffrey Epstein. The world's a small place.
Or is it?
Ted Kaczynski was born on May 22nd, 1942 in Chicago to a working class Polish-American family. His father made sausages, one of 3 jobs available to the Polish during the 1940s.
Okay, I still don't know if that's a joke or just that was actually something real that he put in here.
His mother,
verified-ish. Okay, so it is a joke.
Wanda was sharp, well-read, and she poured everything she had into making sure her kids were educated. By all accounts, Ted was a normal baby.
It feels like the one thing you can, like, as a rich parent, you could give your child is a really good education. Beyond that, like, very few financial dynasties actually last for very long at all. It's one of those things where I think people confuse the notion of high income with the ability to accrue wealth. They're not exactly the same thing. The ability to accrue wealth has more to do with self-restraint, whereas a person with high income can still be spending everything they have, pretty much. If you never learn self-restraint or to live within your means, it doesn't matter how much you bring in. I suppose maybe it does a little bit, but you're still going to be spending all of it on stuff that is not providing a commensurate value.
Happy, laughing, goo-goo, gagaing, etc., engaged with the world around him. And then something happened that his family would talk about for the rest of their lives. When Ted was about 9 months old, he had a severe allergic reaction.
Kaczynski. I have cousins.
And was hospitalized for several days. And at this time, the hospital wouldn't let his parents visit. That was the official policy. At the time, the parents were not allowed in. And his mother described what came back to her as a different child. Before the hospital, Ted was a laughing, active baby. And after the hospital, he had completely shut down. He stopped smiling, stopped making eye contact, and it took weeks for his parents to get him to trust them again. Now, a lot of people will hear that and think...
Sorry, I want to look that up. 10 days in the hospital afterwards, Wanda reported that it took a long time for her son to return to his normal, happy self, worried about his shyness and social development. Wanda claimed she considered putting her young son into studies for autistic children, but ultimately decided against it. At least one neighbor remembered him as strictly a loner.
Contact, and it took weeks.
There's a weird thing, like, there's kind of a chicken and the egg type of situation when it comes to people who are very much loners or whatever like that, where I tend to think that, well, I don't know actually. Is it the isolation that causes the like disparity, or is it the disparity that causes the isolation? Maybe it's a little bit of both.
Weeks for his parents to get him to trust them again. Now, a lot of people will hear that and think that that's a very small thing. A baby in a hospital for a few days. But attachment researchers will tell you that separation trauma at that extremely young age can fundamentally rewire how a child relates to other people for the rest of their life. And when you look at the next chapters in Ted Kaczynski's life, it's kind of hard not to keep that in mind and think about, what happened at the hospital in that event. Ted grew up in Evergreen Park, Illinois, which is a suburb south of Chicago, and from the beginning, two things were obvious. He was extraordinarily intelligent, and he was extraordinarily alone. Ted's IQ tested at 100.
Ah, I know it well.
167
Dang, that's pretty high.
points, which, to put that in
Have I said this before? Like, never mind.
context, is higher than Einstein's estimated IQ and as high as Ivan Drago's from Rocky IV. All right, Dolph Lundgren, very high IQ.
I think he has some sort of degree in mathematics or something. I was going to say, maybe I've mentioned this before, but there is actually notions in studies that the notion of being highly intellectual is almost mutually exclusive with being highly creative. You'll have a person who's one or the other, but almost never both. And I assume people who are creative aren't exactly stupid, but they're just not that, they're not like 160, 170 IQ. So you have those people who, like, I don't know, maybe there's a difference between types of intelligence there where, like I think I said this in the other one too, where you almost have maybe a, never mind, forget that. I'm just being too self-referential here.
Whatever that means. His parents even had him skip 6th grade.
You, just you, building your app
Don't talk
on
to me.
base 44. Describe it.
Grade, and then they had him skip 11th grade, which meant that by the time he was in a classroom with other kids, he was always 2 years younger than basically everyone around him. He later described.
That's actually, it's not as significant. Like, I think the way it would work actually is women hit their puberty first. Not that I do a lot of like research into this. Oh wow, that's stupid. That came out weird. But the notion I think is that women's puberty would hit somewhere from 8 to 13 and be finished by 15. With the guys, it's like 16 to 18. Like it starts by 16 and finishes by 18. I imagine there should be some variability there in both directions. But like 2 years can make a lot of difference, especially at that age. There's actually a weird notion too that that you can have there's almost a plateau when it comes to human maturity. So from like 1 to 15 or whatever, you have like a huge area of growth. But then you can have like a 20-year-old who in age is closer to a 15-year-old or something like that, but would have more in common with an 80-year-old probably than he would with a 13-year-old or 14-year-old or 15-year-old. Because there's that area of time in which there's like a huge degree of development on a personal or biological level. It's strange that way.
Described himself as, quote, a social cripple, and he blamed his parents for what he called destroying his life by advancing him those 2 grades. A lot of people, when they hear or tell the Ted Kaczynski story, start with Harvard or the cabin or,
Yeah,
the bombs. It's important to note that he saw himself as a social cripple or a social outcast. Ted's brother David, born in 1949, would later describe Ted as someone who was brilliant but had trouble connecting to the people around him, which that's starting to track. By the way, I skipped 2 grades and graduated high school when I was 15. I think the main difference between me and Ted Kaczynski is that I am stupid. That's the big thing. My IQ is
That's a little bit self-deprecating, I think. I don't think he's stupid. Might not be the smartest guy, but...
Let's see. What's room temperature? Yeah. 78. Big main difference, really. The family spent time together on camping trips, canoe trips, classic 50s and 60s shit.
Sorry, I'm just... Oh, okay, so I thought that was literally a kid with a pipe in his mouth. Okay. Never mind.
Time together on camping trips, canoe trips, classic 50s and 60s shit, and David looked up to his older brother. But even within his own family, Ted was always somewhere else. In 1958, at the age of 15, Ted Kaczynski was accepted to Harvard. He showed up on campus at age 16 on a full scholarship, a child from a sausage maker's family in Chicago walking into one of the most prestigious universities.
E.T. phone home. Sorry. He's got this thing going on in the back. Weirdly, I was kind of disappointed. I'd say weirdly. And I was disappointed when I learned what the term denizen means. Because just from the sound of it, it like intuitively sounds like you're saying something nasty about someone. A denizen of blah, blah, blah. But it literally just means dweller of. I was kind of disappointed by that. I thought I'd come up with like a new insult or something. Unfortunately not.
On the planet, and he was 2 years younger than every other freshman. And during his sophomore year, a psychology professor named Henry Murray recruited him for a study. Ted was 17 years old, and what happened during that study is something that Harvard sealed in a vault in the year.
So, here's the thing that I think has become a problem in, modern maybe investigations that take place. It feels like people these days, inevitably, they're looking for causality, right? Like, what caused this person to be the way they are? What caused them to blah, 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 blah? Which is not necessarily wrong, but I believe the saying goes, means motive, opportunity, right? Motive. It's not exactly the same thing as causality. I think sometimes people treat other individuals as they baby them almost. They act like nothing's their fault, like they have no agency almost. And I think that can be an issue sometimes in modern sleuthing that takes place. Not just even on a criminal level, on a political level as well.
2000 and has never since opened it. Obviously, for the sake of exposition, to fully understand what happened to Mr. Kaczynski at Harvard, we have to understand the man who did it to him. Henry Murray was a Harvard psychology professor, which would be like calling J. Robert Oppenheimer a physicist. Sure, it's true, but it's kind of beside the point a bit, you know? Before Harvard, Murray spent World War II as a lieutenant colonel for the OSS, which is the direct predecessor.
It's kind of cool. I'm assuming that the CIA doesn't really have a crest, does it? Office of Strategic Services.
To the CIA. His job was selecting and training spies. He designed psychological stress tests to figure out which recruits could handle interrogation.
He talks about this. It sounds like torture, pretty much.
Deception, and extreme pressure without breaking. He developed methods for interrogating POWs, prisoners of war. He profiled Adolf Hitler.
So there's a notion, actually, that, yeah.
For the U.S. government, and wrote an entire psychological...
I think there would be studies, though, that show that torture really isn't a good way of getting stuff. Just, under those types of pressures, people will say anything. I've actually talked about that before, too. I think it has to do with the notion of, again, we just categorically associate pain with being wrong. So if you put a person in enough pain, you can make them think up is down, down is up, right is wrong, wrong is right. You can get them to say anything. As far as the accuracy of it, it doesn't really come into it that much. They're just, at that point, they're kind of running on instincts or something, that any type of higher cognitive stuff is helped complete the analysis of personality of Adolf Hitler, commissioned by the OSS boss, General William Bill Donovan. So there's a general in the CIA at this point. So I wonder if the OSS would have almost been more military, less Secret Service at that point in time.
Breakdown of how Hitler's mind actually worked. And then the war ended and Henry Murray went back to Harvard. But clearly he did not stop experimenting. In 1959, Murray launched a study with an official title designed to sound as boring as possible. He called it Multiform Assessments of Personality Development Among Gifted College Men. This test turned out to be a sort of Enneagram test for domestic terrorists, it seems like. Kind of slightly different. 22 Harvard undergrads were recruited, and Ted Kaczynski at 17 was one of them. And his assigned code name was Lawful, which is an interesting code name. Students were told that they'd be participating in a debate about
Dyadic confrontation. There's a $5 word. You know, ironically, the term $5 word has become a $5 word, kind of. Also, the term esoteric has become kind of esoteric. Funny how that works.
personal philosophy. They were asked to write detailed essays about their most deeply held beliefs, their worldviews, their aspirations, and, according to multiple sources, their sexual desires and erotic fantasies. They were told that in a day or two they'd...
It's kind of sus. Dude, I might skip along further to some of the later. Oh, so we got MK Ultra question, destroyed records, Berkeley and Montana Cabin. Let's start here. You can watch the middle parts there later if you want.
Professor of the university had ever...
For the record, I think if you want to know what happened, more or less, I think... No, go watch the video if you want to.
hired a 25-year-old professor. And on paper, everything was working perfectly for Ted. Ivy League degree, prestigious PhD, tenure track position at one of the best universities in the country, all before he's 26 years old. But something was wrong! Obviously, something was very wrong, and the people around him could feel it, even if they couldn't name it. His colleagues at Berkeley would later say that they remembered almost nothing about him. He taught his classes, he showed up, he went home, he had no friendships, no mentors, no after-work drinks, no faculty dinners. He was a ghost who taught calculus, essentially. And then on June 30th, 1969, without any explanation, Ted Kaczynski resigned. The department chairman, John Addison, wrote to Ted's doctoral advisor and described the resignation as, quote, quite out of the blue. Nobody knew why Ted resigned. Ted never explained it. He just did. He just quit. He moved back to his parents' house in
That's kind of bizarre.
Lombard, Illinois at age 27 and lived in his childhood bedroom. He stayed there for 2 years doing essentially nothing. And then in 1971, he moved to a piece of land outside Lincoln, Montana and built a cabin with his own hands. 10 foot by 12 foot, a loft for sleeping, no electricity, no running water. He grew vegetables, hunted.
There's a weird, like, I kind of get almost the appeal of stuff like that. Obviously, these days we have a lot of technology that we get very involved with, but I do kind of see the appeal of stuff like that.
Wabbits and taught himself to live
A little bit. So it's less noisy, less stressful.
entirely off the land. He later wrote, quote, I hate the system not because of some abstract humanitarian principle, but because I hated living in the system. I got out of it by getting into the mountains, but the system still would not let me alone. But after a few years, it seemed to work. He was alone and he was free, and he was as far away from Harvard and Berkeley and all of it as a person could get. But then the logging started. The wilderness around his cabin, the one thing he'd chosen over everything else, started being torn apart. Roads
Bunny hugger.
were cut through
Oh, tree hugger, never mind. Technically, tree hugger is actually a piece of equipment.
forests he'd walked for years. Trees he
That is used in cutting down trees, which is kind of ironic. Maybe they did that because of it. No, that might be more of a colloquial term as well. I don't know if that's what it's actually called.
known were gone overnight.
For the record, my father's a lumberjack. I like the idea of high canopy forests and whatnot, but I think the notion is that as far as forest fires and whatnot, you do a better job, like select cutting things, knocking out all the old stuff, so it actually works better if it's a managed forest. They did some of that in California, maybe they won't have the and the Canadians. What's up with this stupid Canucks letting the fires go all the time, getting all smoky down here? Selfish little American.
something building within this person that had been building for a very long time, potentially even since the allergic reaction as a baby, since the classrooms where he never fit in.
I forgot about that. Yeah, he had some sort of allergic reaction. I'm not sure exactly what the circumstances surrounding that was.
Since whatever Murray did to him at Harvard, since whatever made him walk away from a career that most smart people would kill for, that thing finally found a direction. And on May 25th, 1978, a package appeared in a parking lot at Northwestern University. That was the first bomb from the Unabomber. The first bomb was addressed to a materials engineering professor at Northwestern named Buckley Christ, but the package was found in a parking lot at the University of Illinois in Chicago with Christ's return address on it. It was sent back to Northwestern where a campus police officer named Terry Marker opened it and it detonated. It caused
Professor materials engineering. He had not sent it.
minor injuries, nobody died. It was a clumsy, amateurish bomb, but it was the beginning of the career of the Unabomber, Ted Kaczynski. A year later, there was another bomb at Northwestern. A graduate student named John Harris picked up what looked like a present left in a common room. It exploded, and once again, there were minor injuries. And then Ted Kaczynski did something that...
And I feel like the whole notion of this type of stuff would have been far easier at one point in history, but like these days, everything is recorded and everyone's tracked. There's far less room for this type of, squirreling around, not being known by people, I guess.
Changed the scale of what he was doing entirely. On November 15th, 1979, he put a bomb in the cargo hold of American Airlines Flight 444 flying from Chicago to Washington, D.C. The bomb detonated mid-flight, smoke filled the cabin, and the plane had to...
That one's actually kind of shocking. And to be fair, like you would think like even like was this before or after the Twin Towers? Because you would think like after the Unabomber type stuff, this 1979. So that would have been before. You would think they would have started to tighten up security at that point. But I feel like they really got kind of crazy after, the Twin Towers went down.
An emergency landing. 12 passengers were treated for smoke inhalation, but nobody died. If that bomb had fully worked the way it was designed to, the plane would have most likely gone down. And that's when the FBI really started looking for this guy who's just mailing bombs. The FBI created the Unabomb Task Force, the University and Airline Bomber Task Force. The media shortened it to...
That rolls off the tongue a lot better.
The Unabomber, and the name...
The Unabomber.
Struck. And over the next several...
Not very intuitive, though, as far as what it means, I guess. Unabomber. I don't know. Maybe.
Years, the bombs kept coming, and they kept getting more and more sophisticated. In June of 1980, he mailed a hollowed-out book to Percy Wood, the president of United Airlines. Wood opened it at his home in Lake Forest, Illinois, and the explosion caused severe injuries, partial blindness, and hearing loss. The book was published by Arbor House.
It really seems like it doesn't like professors.
Whose logo was a tree, and the victim's last name was Wood. Ted really liked trees, it seemed. Ted then hit UC Berkeley.
I praise him for not making a stupid pun there. Sorry. It's kind of a he who smelt a delta type of thing.
Twice, which was the university where he used to teach. In 1982, an engineering professor named, this is his real name, Diogenes Angelakos, picked up what looked like a tool left in a break room in Corey Hall, and it blew up in his face. 3 years later, in the exact same building, an Air Force captain named John Hauser, who was there as a graduate student, opened a package in the computer lab and lost 4 fingers and the vision in one of his eyes. Hauser wanted to be an astronaut, and Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, ruined that dream. In November of 1985, Ted sent a bomb to a psychology professor at the University of Michigan named...
That's kind of one of the what you would consider to be like the least objectionable usages for Elon's thing. What's it called? I don't know what it is. It'll come to me eventually, probably. But the one that uses like using like wireless signal to effectively transmit impulse to stuff. Interesting idea.
James McConnell. McConnell's specialty was behavior modification, and he wrote a textbook called...
No, the notion would be that in the case of in the case of like people who are paralyzed or something like that, it could maybe serve as a replacement.
Understanding human behavior and published extensively on techniques for changing how people think and act. So a man who had been subjected to psychological experiments at Harvard sent a bomb to a psychologist who wrote about behavior modification. Now, we mentioned the logging earlier. The journaling was a big part of Ted's modus operandi. He was writing all this stuff down, and he referred to McConnell in his journal as a behavior modification researcher. He knew exactly who he was targeting and exactly why. After many years of just mailing bombs and hurting people, the bombing campaign turned lethal on December 11th of 1985. Hugh Scruton owned a computer rental store in Sacramento called Rentec. He was 38 years old and walked out the back door of his shop, saw what looked like a...
So that feels like it's kind of outside of the realm of what he was normally doing. Again, Unabomber, University Air Bomber.
Piece of road debris in the parking lot and picked it up. It was a bomb that was loaded with nails and splinters. It went off.
Well, here's the question. How did they actually know the commonality? Was there some sort of like, this is how the guy is building the bomb, this is the type of material he's using to do it? So they're thinking there's a common source? I guess maybe there's not a lot of people out there sending bombs places, but still.
And killed him instantly. And Ted Kaczynski was now a murderer. In February of 1987, the owner of a computer store in Salt Lake City...
I guess the question would be like, how would you know whether it was actually the original? Yeah, I don't know. Or just some sort of copycat.
Named Gary Wright noticed a piece of wood with nails in it near his employee's car, and when he moved it, it exploded, and 200 pieces of shrapnel went through his body. But just moments before this happened, an employee inside the store looked out the back window and saw a man who looked like this. The classic Unabomber sketch. A man in a hoodie and aviator sunglasses in the parking lot. That description became the classic sketch. If you've ever seen the Unabomber image, the hooded figure with the dark glasses, it came from that one witness at that store on that day. And insanely, this would be the only physical description the FBI had for almost a decade of the Unabomber. So after the event at the Utah computer store, there was a 6-year gap from 1987 to 1993. There was nothing. It was all silence. Ted was on a bit of a hiatus, but when he came back with 2 bombs in 2 days. The first...
Well, you'd maybe think there would be a bit of a quell a little bit after... if it's the first one that's ever killed someone, then that might give a person pause, like just psychologically.
This was on June 22nd, 1993. A geneticist named Charles Epstein opened a padded envelope in the kitchen of his home.
Sorry. It just occurs to me that grave injuries, I don't know if that's actually a punishment or if that's actually a pun, or kind of the etymology of it would be that way. Grave injuries. I'll have to use that more. Gravely injured. Like injured unto the grave. I don't know, like, again, would that be the origin of it? I should look that up, like what the actual etymology is sometime.
In Tiburon, California. The explosion destroyed 3 fingers on his right hand, fractured his arm, and caused abdominal injuries and...
This guy weirdly looks like Trudeau's father or something. The Canadian guy.
Partial hearing loss. His wife was in the next room. And just to be very clear, Charles Epstein was not related to Jeffrey Epstein, okay? Ted targeted Charles Epstein.
Or so they say, and want you to believe.
Because he was the editor of the American Journal of Human Genetics, and Ted saw genetics research as technology manipulating nature itself, even though Epstein's actual work was focused on understanding Down syndrome. 2 days later, on June 24th,
well, actually seems kind of like a noble goal.
Came the bomb that opened this video. David Gelernter at Yale. The package on his desk, the explosion that took his hand, the blood...
That was, again, that wasn't real, right? The one that maybe that's the one he was describing, but I'm just saying that looked like a nuclear explosion at the beginning of the video, if I remember correctly. I'm quite sure that is not exactly true to life.
Pressure at 0. After the bombing, Ted wrote a letter to the New York Times under his group name FC, which stood for Freedom Club. In it, he addressed Gelernter directly, quote, "People with advanced degrees aren't as smart as they think they are. Weirdly
kind of based. I'm not saying I agree with it like anything else he has to say, pretty much, but I do tend to think that sometimes scientists have a tendency to act more certain than they have any right to be about stuff. They act as though the evidence admits of only one explanation. That explanation is our explanation, our qualified, informed explanation. I suppose I can't knock the informed part, but man, they get very self-aggrandizing at times, especially paleontologists. Those guys are basically like the weathermen of science. I tend to almost view them that way. Like, it feels like with regards to especially like historical record or stuff like that, I tend to think like the closer in you get, maybe yeah, sure, but they very much get, it feels like, high on their own smoke or whatever when it comes to this. Again, it feels like, again, they act more certain than sometimes they have any right to be about stuff that happened millennia ago.
If you'd had any brains, you would have realized that there are a lot of people out there who resent bitterly the way techno nerds like you are changing the world, and you wouldn't have been dumb enough to open an unexpected package from an unknown source. So he mocked the guy that he had nearly killed for not seeing it.
That seems kind of, I guess maybe he didn't know it, but again, like mocking a guy who studies Down syndrome, I think that was this guy. Seems like he's one of the do-gooders, that type of thing, so kind of crass.
Coming, saying that he was dumber than he thought he was. On December 10th, 1994, an advertising executive named Thomas Mosser was killed by a package bomb at his home in North Caldwell, New Jersey. He was supposed to be picking out a...
Again, kind of off-script a little bit as far as like Unabomber, but I guess he didn't really give himself that name. I think they gave him that name.
Christmas tree with his family that day, but his wife found him dead. Ted later explained the killing in a letter. He said Moser's firm Burson Marsteller had helped Exxon clean up its image after the Exxon Valdez oil spill, and that made them a legitimate target. There was, however, one problem with that reasoning. Ted got the information from an Earth First newsletter, and it was wrong. Moser had no connection to the Exxon Valdez account.
That's kind of one of the main problems with like vigilante justice, is that for every person who would be like a Batman, there's like 1,000 numpties who get it entirely wrong in their research. And all in all, like, it might be better to leave it to the courts and the cops before you do anything untoward or injudicial. Anyways, we're gonna skip to the I'll go with the cabin raider and the rest. Here we go.
I didn't think that Factor could help me reach my protein goals. Boy, was I wrong. Free high-protein breakfast for a year? Yeah.
6 FBI agents arrived at a 10 by 12 foot cabin years earlier. Using forensic linguistics, the idea that every person has a unique way of writing and patterns of grammar.
It's quite true. It's kind of an interesting study in any case.
Word choice, sentence structure, all as a distinctive fingerprint of sorts. Fitzgerald's analysis concluded that the manifesto's author and the letter writer were almost certainly the same person, and that analysis became the basis
Pretty cool.
for a search warrant. And on April 3rd, 1996, FBI agents arrived at a 10 by 12 foot cabin outside Lincoln, Montana. Ted Kaczynski answered the door, and inside the cabin, agents found a live bomb ready to be mailed. They found an original copy of
Sweet. Sorry, no, it's sweet that they caught him in any
the
case.
manifesto, and they found 40,000 pages of handwritten journals documenting basically everything. His daily life, his philosophy, his bomb-making experiments, and detailed accounts of every attack. He had logged
I've been framed. Sorry.
it all. 17 years of terror logged by his own handwriting in a cabin smaller than most people's bedrooms. On January 22nd, 1998, Ted Kaczynski pleaded guilty to all federal charges in a Sacramento courtroom. The deal was life without parole in exchange for no death penalty, with 4 consecutive life sentences plus 30 years. $15 million in restitution that he would never obviously pay because he's a dirt guy. He was sent to ADX Florence, the federal supermax in Colorado, where he'd spend the next 23 years in a 7 by 12 foot cell, slightly smaller than the cabin that he built for himself. After the arrest, David Kaczynski set up the Unabomber Survivors Fund, where he took $630,000 of what was left of the reward money after legal fees and taxes and donated every cent to all the victims. He wrote letters, made phone calls, met with survivors in person, and apologized to every single one of them for what his brother had done. Ted never apologized to anyone ever, not one time. Not to the families of the 3 people he killed, not to the 23 he injured, not to his own brother who gave up everything to stop him. David heard later third hand through an attorney.
Okay, that's new. I didn't know his brother was part of the thing
that when Ted was told it was his brother who turned him in, he wouldn't believe it at first. He said, quote, "No, David loves me. He would never do such a thing. But alas, David does not like you very much, or at least he..."
All right, the moment I found out, I realized, thank God we did what we did. Thank God we saved a life in the end. I did what I did with the heaviest heart I've ever had. When Ted was arrested and assigned provisional attorney, the first thing he asked the attorney was, how did they even find me? The attorney said, well, it's being reported that your brother turned you in. I heard this third hand, but Ted's... I heard this, I heard this third hand. Third hand. I've never heard of that. I'm going to have to use that. I heard of this third hand, but Ted had said, no, that's not possible. David loves me. He'd never do that. I don't know. So second hand is when you've heard it from someone who heard it themselves. I assume third hand is you've heard it from someone who heard it from someone who heard it themselves. Nice. Nice. Kind of a friend of a friend type thing. You never do that. I don't know if that was the point. If that it was at that point or at some point, he told his attorneys that he would never, ever have anything to do with his family again. That, as far as he was concerned, I was no brother.
David loves me. He would never do such a thing. But alas, David does not like you very much, or at least he's got morals, it seems like. He's got morals. That's the main difference. Ted Kaczynski spent the rest of his life in prison, and in 2021, he was diagnosed with late-stage rectal cancer and was transferred to a federal medical center in Butner, North Carolina, where he underwent chemotherapy for about a year and a half before stopping treatment in early 2023, and a month...
So he was still around quite recently.
Before his death, staff noted he was depressed. He was sent for psychiatric evaluation, and on June 10th, 2023, at 12 in the morning, Ted Kaczynski was found hanging from a handicap rail in his cell with a shoelace tied around his neck.
Not the Harry. What is it with people?
He was 81 years old. The boy who entered Harvard...
Sweet glory. It's actually quite a goodly life, but...
At 16, the subject codenamed...
That's weird.
Named Lawful, the youngest professor Berkeley ever hired, the man who lived in a 10-by-12 cabin and mailed bombs for 17 years, murdered 3 people, and maimed over 20. Dead by his own hand in a room not much different from where he started. Now, obviously, I have to talk about the Epstein connection. One of the guys who got blown up by Ted Kaczynski and is also implicated in the, well, not implicated in a really legal sense, but rather talking about, he is implicated in the Epstein files, okay? David Gilernter. If you've been watching this video, you know that
he looks like a perv.
guy. This David is the Yale computer.
He actually looks like that dude from, what is it, the Jerry Seinfeld thing. So that's how he looks like.
Okay. David Gilernter.
A little bit, but with hair.
If you've been watching this video, you know that guy. This David is the Yale computer science professor who opened a package on June 24th, 1993 and lost his own right hand. So why was Ted Kaczynski interested in David? In 1991, 2 years before the bombing, Gilernter published a book called Mirror Worlds. And that book essentially predicted the World Wide Web before most people had ever heard of the internet. He was one of the people building the future.
It's kind of interesting, like, again, it might be a case of the chicken and the egg. Like, what causes it? Is this sci-fi that causes people to, figure it out? Or is it, something that they would have figured out anyways, and this person is just perceiving the fact that... I guess I kind of wonder how often sci-fi can lead to that type of stuff, lead to those types of innovations or whatever. It's a interesting notion. I think another one would have been Isaac Asimov, who would have been very much ahead of his time in predicting certain types of things or whatever, or writing certain types of things into his stories.
that Ted Kaczynski was trying to stop. David's name appears in 560.
To be fair, he's talked about particle fields or stuff like that, so, never know. Might be around the corner.
63 entries in the
What about hoverboards? Where are hoverboards?
DOJ's Epstein document library. They were somewhat close, it seems. How close were they? Well, in December of 2009, a literary agent named John Brockman, who ran something called the Edge Foundation, forwarded an email from Gelernter to Epstein. Brockman was a connector. He made introductions between wealthy people and academics. He's the same person who introduced Epstein to scientists at MIT. Gelernter described Epstein as, quote, a sort of brooding, mystical appearance, and said he was willing to talk to him. So they started emailing each other, and they kept emailing each other for 6 years. This is after Jeffrey Epstein's conviction, sweetheart deal. They talked between 2009 to 2015. He was a registered sex offender at this time and pleaded guilty in 2008. All right, guys. That's before the correspondence began, so no excuses, Gelernter. The big email is that in October 2011, Gelernter...
So he was a person who associated with Jeffrey Epstein after he was already convicted. I understand, like, it feels like there's not a lot of, like, billionaires, so... Like, I'm not entirely shocked at the notion of a lot of billionaires knowing each other or, like, being at the same parties or something like that. I imagine it happens quite a lot. But in this case, he was a guy who seems to have began his association with Epstein after all the bad stuff came out. Anyways, you can go check that out if you want. Did the Government Create the Unabomber by Oompaville. I think we're actually just going to be done with that for today, and we're gonna do a little bit of gaming here and then be done for today. Dream Engines, Joss. Ow. Good kind of ow, but ow. No, I don't want a new game. All right. Jeez. All right, now. Let's go find some rock. Tab. Alright, let's go like so. It's not good enough. mountain had to fall, but it's all in the game, all in a wonderful game that we know as love. You had words with him, and your future's looking dim. Once in a while he will call, but it's all in the game. Alright, now, where the deuce? Please tell me I didn't leave all my wood stuff somewhere else, you stupid little booger holler. I think I did. So all of the wood stuff is left somewhere. Alright. Ooh. Cactus collector. Interesting. Alright. Let's do a couple right here. Alright, no, that's for something else. Alright. Let's do a couple right here. Nope, wrong. Bad. No good. Now for the love. There we go. Alright, I got two of those going on. Should probably what do you need for this? Need more of that weird stuff, old world scraps. 60 to be precise. Alright, now I'm going to get some towers up. I think about good. That'll do. That'll do. Now. There does seem to be a crystal source. Come on, boyos. They normally don't go after those things. I don't know why they're going after this one. Alright, now, crystal. Eh. Alright. Better, better. Now. Defense. Mother of pearl. Almost finished. Bloody. All right, there we go. Hopefully that's where it needs to be. I think I want to move this. A bit closer. All right, there we go. That's where that is now. Old world scrap, right? Right here. Yep. I really should do at some point here. Alright. Acid shard miner. We come across any? Population still good on production, I believe. Scraps, so 36. Really kind of want to get enough to do 20 more fuel. 5 more scraps, nice. Fire, aimless. I don't think so, no. Let's get back and heal up if we can. Ooh. Alright, now, anything else we need to do? Good on that. Sweet. 2+ on food. Nice, 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 nice. Something we can improve right now. Not at the moment. Alright, no more featherstone over here. So technically I could still gonna have to come through that way. Alright. Is there this way? Hold on. What about above? What about up here? I'll leave this here for now. Gonna go a wandering. Now, Featherstone. I take his whole person. Good. Should do. Yoink. All right. Good. Think we're good. You can upgrade these things even. Not at this moment, though. Alright, inventory. What I got? What do I got? 46. I need a good bit more. Well, I say a good bit more. 14 more? 14 more old world scrap. Wait a minute. There's another one up here. You fell right into my trap. almost have enough with the 21 down south. Oh, for the love. What the Harry? What the Harry? That was not there last time. See, I wonder if the threat level just scales the enemies up, like, I don't know. Enemies, loot amount. Speaking of which, expedition. I need to create one. And, you know what I also need to do? There's a couple that need to be explored. Alright. Move. Move! Ow. Blimey. Alright. Line them up about here. I've come back. Anyways, alright. So, what do we have here? I'm gonna build a workshop. Workshop lab. Alright, I think hopefully good-ish. Yeah. All right. Some of that stuff going. Fortunately, a lot more of that stuff first. All right. Now. Ooh. What does that even cost, anyways? Is it just sandalwood at that point? I am running low on electric, unfortunately. Alright. Let's get a boogie. Gonna move on. Now. No. Oh. Here we go. Here we go. Right. Better. Huh. Sort items from a single entrance into 3 exits. I don't necessarily need that. I just want to get this to a point figurine. Alright. Alright, is that good enough? Is that good enough? Alright. What else do we need? Oh, Expedition Center. And I want another floaty thingy. Almost there. Do a little bit more exploring. Oh. Did I? Ooh, stone walls. Nice. Shift. Blueberry farm. Okay, it's a thing. Yes. Oh, that does actually require a resource, I guess. Anyway, I never thought I needed one. All right, whatever works. There we go. Hello, gorgeous. I think we're about where I need to be. Another extra... What the Harry? Do these enemies respawn? Alright. E. 57, never mind. A couple more. A little bit more. Stay all night, stay a little longer, dance all night, dance a little longer. There we go. Hello, Dolly. Now, let's get a move on. Alright, craft. Yes. What's a smoker? Single-use device that will camouflage your city. Pausing for 20 cycles. Nice. Nice. A crossbow. That could be interesting too. But for the moment, engine fuel. Huzzah. I should maybe start thinking about getting off. Not in a salacious way. Pervs. Ooh, there we go. Upgrade that one. Are there any? Can I afford? One on these. Oh, goodness gracious. love to get this one as well. Oh, huzzah! $82. Nice. Now, if we can, it'd be nice to have another expansion as well. And make sure you get the wood ones on. Alright. Blocked. Also blocked. And those are the only two ones I can do here, I think. How is that blocked? Do I just have to destroy that stuff in there? Yeah, I guess these are available, kind of. Ooh, some up here too. So these down here are blocked somehow. How in the hairy is that the case? No. I have to put another one here. Alright. Like so. Almost there. Come on, get up there. That's just enemies. There we go. Now what are we at? 119. And oh, bloody suck! I forgot about that. I'm gonna have to build an electricity thing, which I can't do because I don't have flux stuff. I should just take off right now. I don't want another power generator. Alright, here we go. Something better. Right here. 8.5. Need some stuff to upgrade that. Alright, you know, I could probably delete a couple of these things too. Alright, there we go. Let's get this a little bit closer to the green. What else do we require? Why is there a resource called acid power? Or maybe that's maybe what it's researching, not the thing it's running on. But it's still acid power. It's like a pun. Alright, what do we got here? Almost there. I could probably use a few more flux capacitors. No, not flux capacitors. Wrong phrase. Closer. Ooh, hello. That's not what I want right now, though. Alright. Let's see if we can improve this. Like so. Yes! Chess! We got it in the green. Rest of that anyways. Alright. And we're probably going to want to... I don't know how to craft anything here. Scrap equipment. Nice. That's better, right? What else? Is there anything else we can improve here? Basic fist. Nope. What is the one where I can craft? Alright, one last thingy before I guess we can take off. Huh. Insufficient. Mother of pearl. Maybe that'll do. Man. I'm making it easy, are you? Alright. Yeah, I'm gonna need to take off. It's getting a bit dicey, I think. No, I got this. I'm still taking on the... For the win. Alright. I think I need a few more flux thingies. If at all possible. possible. I forgot, like, what's the actual recipe for the rest of this stuff? That's we have starwood, right? Acid shards. Bloodwood logs. Acid wood, alright. And one more thing, what is... that? There's a new building. Cabatas. I don't know what that is. It doesn't say what it is. Alright. Okay, so we have a few things we probably want to move on to. Junk. That's upgraded, so I want at least 2 of the wood things on the city. That one's upgraded, right? So there we go. Alright, I think that's about good. Is there anywhere that has actual acid? There we go. Acid shards. Expedition hub. Expedition cost. Blah, blah, blah. Resource rich. Supply depot ruins. Blight lands. That's the only one with acid shards. Unfortunately, so I think that's the one for us. That's the one for us. Anyways, I think that's about me done, so thanks for watching, I guess. Have a good weekend.